Hi, I'm Sandi Gaskell, and I attend the Saturday evening service, but I've also attended the Sunday mornings. And I wanted to share one other story though. One incident in particular where the Lord gave me a real direction, and it wasn't a direction that I had in myself, or Dave and I hadn't, we didn't have that direction ourselves, we didn't have that wisdom. Dave and I were married, and we were living in Grand Prairie, and when we first got married, we lived in an apartment. And but while we were there, after a few months we were married, living in that apartment, and his parents said that they would give us some money for a down payment for a house. And that was great. So we started to look for a house, and there were places available in Grand Prairie, but everything's really expensive. So we found that, we could buy a brand new house in Wembley. And it was considerably less than the ones in Grand Prairie, and brand new. And we were able even to pick our colors and curtains and all the outside of the house. We could do everything, and so we did buy this house and decorated it all nice and moved in, and it was very beautiful. And in the meantime, I think we were maybe the first house in that neighborhood, and then the next house got built, and we got some new neighbors that moved in there, and we got to know them. And they were a common law couple, so they weren't married, and they drank and smoked and I did drugs, but we were in the world but not of the world, so it didn't really bother us that they did those things. And so we did spend quite a lot of time with them. We started to have an evening card game, and then sometimes it would go all weekend, and I remember staying up all night one time, and that was just the worst. Playing cards and drinking coffee. We didn't drink, sometimes I drank beer, but we didn't. So that was all fine. And then eventually, their names were Dave and Dale, and we are Dave and Sandi. So Dave got a job at the bank, and I worked in Grand Prairie, and Dave now worked with Dave at the bank. And sometimes, Grand Prairie was so booming, there was so much work, and often they worked late because there was just not enough staff, and even workers were in such demand in Grand Prairie. So they would drive home together, and I would come home earlier when I was done my day, and then they would come home later. So they spent quite a bit of time together. So we're spending quite a bit of time with this couple. And then they started to have this idea that, why don't we rent our houses out? And Dave, the neighbor, he actually had a line on it was a 2-story house on an acreage, but closer to Grand Prairie, because we were in Wembley, and it was a 15 to 20 minute drive every evening. But that was an acreage closer to town, and it was quite a roomy house. And he said we should rent out our houses, and we should buy this bigger house, and we should all live there together, and save money. We rent out our houses for this big price, and when we lived in that place, we'd share the mortgage and everything, together. And Dave and I, and I'm thinking, okay, yes, I want to rent my house out and make lots of money. And I'm just thinking dollar signs. And Dave's, I don't know what he's thinking, but yeah, it's probably a way to provide for us, right? So we, that next, maybe Saturday, we got together and we went over to that place. And when we got there, it was some kind of really old house. It looks like it had been moved from somewhere. So I'm not even sure if it had a very proper foundation. And it had this big diamond-shaped window upstairs, in the upstairs floor. Kind of looked lopsided and weird. But anyway, so we meet them there, and they had brought their friend Robin along. And he's kind of a tall guy, and I'm thinking, like, why is he here? Like, maybe he's a contractor, or is he gonna live in that house with us? Like, what's the plan here? So anyway, so we all go into the house, and Dave and Dale, they kind of walk through the kitchen and just keep going, and I'm looking, I think, wow, okay, well, if we're gonna live here, is this a kitchen I'm gonna be able to cook in, or like, how is this gonna work? And that other guy, Robin, he's just standing there in the kitchen, and he's not moving very fast. Like, maybe I'm thinking, maybe he's on drugs, possibly. But so anyways, I'm just standing there, and I said to him, well, what do you think? And he just kind of smiled a little bit, and then and he's quite tall, he just ducked down and he kissed me on the lips. And I just went, oh, and then I'm thinking, well, maybe he doesn't know I'm married. And so I just said, oh, I gotta go find my husband. And I quickly ran up the stairs, because and that's where they had gone. And here, oh my goodness, this guy's on drugs and he's kissing me. Okay, so then we finally had looked at it all, and everybody was really excited about this, and we're gonna live here together, and we're gonna, rent our houses out, and, because there's such a booming market. So we all, we gather together, and everybody's, all excited. And then Dave, the neighbor, says, okay, well, we'll get together and we'll do this offer on Monday, because that was Saturday. So, okay, that's fine. So we all leave, and the next day, Sunday, we go to church, and yeah, and we're, and I just love our church, and we're worshiping, and and praising the Lord, and then, then I have that, and then the Lord says to me, I gave you this beautiful house, you decorated it, I gave it for you to live in. Like, why are you gonna go rent it to strangers? They're not gonna appreciate it. And then I realized, well, that's the word of wisdom from the Lord. So I told Dave, and he's, yeah, I guess, like, he totally, like, okay, yeah, if that's the Lord's word, So the next Monday, when we're supposed to go and make that offer, or maybe even later that day, we met with them. And then that's when I explained, the Lord told me that, he's given us this beautiful house to live in. We just can't leave it and go and rent. And they're trying to protest it, but then they're going, oh, the Lord says. And I couldn't, and I could only give God the credit for this change in our mind. But when you look at my story, a person that's older and wiser would know that was a really bad idea. But anyway, so we totally backed out of it because the Lord told us, not because we had anything against them personally or their friends or that house, nothing about those things. It was the Lord. And we, didn't do it, and we just thanked the Lord for that. And in the meantime, those guys did go ahead and buy it, and for sure it was a party house. And I think Dave and Dale, they didn't even stay together, and I think the interest rates went up in the 80s there, early 80s, and they ended up losing it. So the Lord, I give him total credit for sparing us from like such a disaster.